Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to week 11, episode 11 of the Between the Lines podcast with me, Daniel, and my buddy Michael. We got a lot to talk about today. A lot of good things happening over the weekend. Let's get right to it, man. I'm really excited about getting into this episode. And we're just gonna get started with it. We're gonna first thing in the matter, or first topic is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Denver Broncos. Main question that I wanted to ask to you, Michael, and to discuss with everyone watching and whatnot. Are the Chiefs in danger of missing the playoffs? Currently as they stand, they're 5-5. They're third in the AFC West. They currently are outside the bubble in the playoff picture, ninth seed as we stand, and they currently have a 52% chance of making the playoffs, which is higher than most that are outside of the bubble. And the teams are in front of them right now in the playoffs. The Denver Broncos, who are solely in first place, New England Patriots, Indianapolis Colts, Pittsburgh Steelers, Buffalo Bills, Chargers, and then you got the Jaguars. So all those teams sitting in front right now, 1 through 7 in the playoffs. How are you feeling about the Kansas City Chiefs right now at the moment after 11 weeks? And what's your confidence level between them? And do you think they're in danger?
I appreciate it. I'm glad to be back. Another episode. But let's jump right into it. Like you said, 5-5, third in the AFC West, only ahead of the Raiders. Losing to the Broncos yesterday on a game-winning field goal. Close game. I think the Kansas City Chiefs have been in pretty much every game this year in some way matter. Five one-score games for them. Like last year, they were 12-0, I think, in one-score games. This year, they're 0-5 in one-score games so far. So it's a tale of two seasons. It's not really a Kansas City Chiefs team we're used to. We're not used to seeing them lose go 0-5 in one-score games. You usually see Patrick Mahomes pull those out. Andy Reid and then Patrick Mahomes, they just seem to find a way to win football games when it matters the most. But obviously that's not the case this year so far. Like I said, 0-5 through 11 weeks in one-score games, and but if you look at stat wise, they're good on the offense and defense side of the ball. They're ninth in points per game. They're fourth in opponents' points per game allowed. They have the fifth best passing offense, a top half of the league in rushing offense. Um, they're top 12 in passing defense and rushing defense, and they've allowed the fourth fewest touchdowns all year as a defense. So you know, obviously they have a good team. They have a team that can make a run. Like we said, that's a loaded AFC West outside the Raiders. You have the Broncos, obviously, who are 9-2, first place, very talented team with Bo Nix. Second place is the Chargers. They're 7-4, very good team as well. Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. And then, of course, at 5-5 and 500 in the NFL right now, which we don't usually see this far and deep in the season, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. But like I said, the stat wise, if you look at stat wise, they have a good offense, they have a good defense. Obviously, that hasn't changed. Spags is a what'd you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Spags is a great defensive coordinator. Andy Reid seems to always draw up the right plays in the right moments. But the road doesn't get any tougher for the Kansas City Chiefs. 7 more games, and 4 of those 7 games are against teams who are 500 or better. Next week, they're at home against the 8-2 Indianapolis Colts. So that's a tough test right after the Denver Broncos. They go to Dallas. Who obviously is playing right now on Monday Night Football as we're recording this against the Raiders. I think they're up the last time I checked. Um,
Yeah.
then they're at home against the 5-5 Houston Texans. They're back at home against the Chargers, who are second in the AFC West. Going to be a great matchup in a few weeks. They go to Tennessee, who's the worst team in the league in my opinion. And then they come home against two. They finish out the season with two AFC West rivals at home against Denver. That's going to be a good matchup, a good rematch of what we saw yesterday. And then they finish out the season in Las Vegas. So, like I said, 4 out of the 7 remaining teams they have on their schedule are 500 or better, with the Texans, the Colts, the Broncos, and of course the Chargers. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. They're not playing an easy schedule the rest of the way outside of maybe the Titans and the Cowboys and the Raiders. So, um, it's gonna be interesting to see. You're back at home this week against the Colts. It's a tough test. Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor, uh, very good offense up there. Shane Steichen has built himself a very good offense and very good culture in Indianapolis. That's definitely a game I think we'll have our eye on this week. But it doesn't get any easier, like I said. So right now, my confidence level would probably be I want to say about 60% to make the playoffs. I don't want to doubt Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, nobody can take away what he's able to do and what he can make happen, especially coming down to the end of the season and into the playoffs in January and December. So, right now I have them. I say they will make the playoffs. I think they can pull out some wins. I think they can bounce back this week against the Colts. I feel like Dallas and Houston after that is two games they can win. Obviously, Tennessee, I think they'll win no matter what. And then it's just happening to be able to pull out one against the AFC West rivals in the Chargers, Broncos, or Raiders. I think they can beat the Raiders, but you have to pull out one or two or both against the Chargers and the Broncos. Both will be at home, so that gives you a little advantage. You're inside of Kansas City. You're inside the Red Kingdom. You have the fans behind your back. It's a great fan. That's a great fan culture up there. It's a hard place to play. Players have said that over and over again. So, um, we'll see what happens. It's a tough road the rest of the way. It's an up and down schedule for them. It's going to be something. We obviously, like we say, we talk about the Chiefs a lot on this podcast just because they're a team that always seems to do things week in and week out, and they're a dynasty, no doubt about it. They are for sure a team that it seems to be in the right spot every year. AFC Championship game, Super Bowl championship, Super Bowl champions or runner up. So they're always in the mix, no matter what. I think they'll be in the mix come the end of the season as well. But it's going to be tough. You got tough opponents coming up. Like I said, the Colts this week. But stat wise, they're top 10. They're top half of the league in every statistical category on offense and defense. So it's not their fault. They play in a tough, like I said, tough division. They play tough opponents. They're 0-5 in one score games. You got to be able to win the close games. It's something they did well last season, 12-0 in one score games, but 0-5 so far through 11 weeks. So you got to be able to pull out the close ones and win the games that come down to the wire. That's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned the the opponents that they face. Luckily for the Chiefs, like you said, they have the favor of being at home when they play these tough opponents like the Broncos, like the Colts. I think yeah,
Yep.
Colts they
Colts,
play at home. And they
Colts,
have the
Chargers,
Panthers again.
all at home.
Yeah, yeah, so they have that in their favor. Um, and they're 5-5. I just think when you watch them play, like yesterday when I was watching them play against Denver, their offensive line was really struggling all game.
Yeah.
Felt like Patrick Mahomes was kind of like, scrambling out of the pocket more, but not in a good way. Like, we're used to seeing, like, he wasn't able to make those throws, off platform or anything like that to, create extension on the play or whatnot. I mean, I think it starts with Jawan Taylor on that offensive line as well because, he is, I think, the most penalized offensive lineman in the league. I think he was last year, if I'm not mistaken. And it hasn't, and he's continued it this year as well. So I think it starts with him, boost up that left tackle spot there in terms of protecting Patrick Mahomes and whatnot. So I think if the Chiefs want to do better and have a chance at making the playoffs, I think the offensive line has to get better. To protect them and whatnot. Have Mahomes. If Mahomes can stay in the pocket, and have time to deliver these throws, I think they will be fine. And they will have success. But I'm just not seeing it right there. Their defense, I think, has been holding their own, playing well. But if the offense can't do anything, then their defense is going to be out there more times than not. So, and they're going up against a really good team with Indianapolis. They're going to have to stop Jonathan Taylor and that underrated passing offense that the Colts have been able to produce with Daniel Jones in that quarterback. So I think that will be an interesting game. It's not the primetime game, which I think a lot of people weren't expecting it to be. But I think if there was a case for it to be a primetime game this week, I think that would have been a pretty cool one. But I mean, nonetheless, but in terms of them making the playoffs, what percentage I think they have, I think it really just goes up to how badly do they want it right now? Because I think they're a team that, they've been to the playoffs so many times in the Patrick Mahomes era. They've won all these Super Bowls, all these AFC championships. They haven't really been in this specific position. 5-5 at this point in the year. Last year, I mean, they were just sneaking by with a lot of these quick wins and whatnot. Eventually, once they ran into a juggernaut, it was going to come flying in, like, like Philadelphia Eagles. And they were, all over that. But I think this year they're facing a little bit harder predicament. Like I said, a 52% chance to make the playoffs right now, according to the according to NFL.com. But I don't know. In my opinion, I just think it really depends on how badly they want it. I think the Broncos are really playing. I think they're playing the best out of anyone in the AFC, including the Patriots. So I think the Patriots are playing very well as well. Um, but Bo Nix, he's lighting it up. I think he's playing very well, very complimentary football. Um, and so I think, when you have Bo Nix and then what the Denver Broncos are doing, I think if they keep doing that, they're going to be fine in the AFC West. They'll win, a division title there. But I think it's going to come down to the wire for the Kansas City Chiefs. These aren't walk in the park matchups. I mean, like you said, they still got Las Vegas and Tennessee. So, those could be some wins there that they could get right there. But they're gonna, like you said, they're gonna have to win one of those games, like Chargers, Denver, all that kind of stuff. Um, but in my opinion, I think it's 50% chance right now for them. Uh, and I think if they do they make the playoffs, it's going to be very hard because they're not going to have home field advantage or anything like that. They're going to have to go on the road. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see from how they are able to um, handle this type of adversity, see where they're at right now. But um, yeah, man. If you got anything else to add in terms of the Broncos or anything like that?
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head and everything, every point. Like you said, they just got to want it. Like I said, 0-5 in one score games this year. Last year they definitely wanted it, 12-0 in one score games. So when it came down to the wire and it was a close game, Patrick Mahomes seemed to find a way every time last year. This year it just seems like it just slips out of their hands at the last second. So um, they're 5-5 and 0-5 in one score games. You turn around all those one score games into wins like they did last year, the Kansas City Chiefs are sitting at 10-0 and the only undefeated team in the league. So it's a tale of the game is it's a game of inches, it's a game of plays, it's a game of momentum. It's a game that can change like that in an instant. It's a game that all you need is a one last play to win it. That's all you need sometimes. So losing one score games, especially five of them, and that being your five losses all coming in one score games. It's tough, man. That's hurts just knowing that if you turn all of them around, you're 10-0 and undefeated. But like you said, you're going to have two wins, I think, in Tennessee and Las Vegas. That puts you at 7 wins. But you going 7-10, you're not going to make the playoffs. You got to be able, like you said, obviously you're going to have home field against the Colts, against the Chargers, against the Broncos, against Houston. So every team that is above 500, you play the rest of the way. You're at home against every single one of them. The only road games you have are at Dallas, who's not doesn't have a winning record, at Tennessee, and at Las Vegas. So you get the luxury of being home. You get the luxury of your home fans being in the stands against the toughest teams on your schedule remaining. But you got to win at least two of those. I think you at least got to win two of them. Two of them put you at 9 wins, in my opinion, because you're going to get Tennessee and Las Vegas. So you'll finish at 9-8 with two of those wins. But to feel more comfortable, you're going to need about three of them. I think 10 wins will put you in the playoffs. But that's winning five out of the next seven. So and it starts this week. You're at home against the Colts, 8-2 coming off a bye. They're a very good team. They're very sound on offense. They're very good on defense. So, I don't have much more to say. Just like you said, we're around the same mark percentage wise, what we think, about 50-60% for us. Um, it's just going to be a week by week basis for the Chiefs for right now. Definitely 500. You're past the halfway mark of the NFL regular season, so it's crunch time. It's time where people, you know, you either get eliminated or you make the playoffs. So you got to put up or shut up. You got to win your games. You got to win the one score games, and you got to be able to win games time after time, especially against big opponents, and they haven't been able to do that so far. So definitely going to keep an eye on the Chiefs, but right now, probably about 50-60% chance of making the playoffs. 7 games to go, 7 more weeks. It's going to be a grueling stretch for them, but you never count out Patrick Mahomes, that's for sure.
Yeah. See what else we have to talk about. Um, so going next off, what we're going to be talking about is Matthew Stafford and his, continuous quest to win his first MVP in the NFL. Um, as the Los Angeles Rams beat the Seattle Seahawks in 21-19 yesterday in Los Angeles. Rams right now sit 8-2, second seed in the NFC right now. Taking first place in the NFC West. How did you see Matthew Stafford and how the Rams played yesterday, in terms of offense, and what did you see in their 21-19 win?
Yeah, obviously that was a game that most people were watching. It was the battle for the top of the NFC West. Two very good teams on the West Coast in Seattle and Los Angeles. But Stafford is just a baller, man. There's no doubt about that. He's only thrown 2 picks all year. It's the second fewest thrown by a quarterback who's played all year. First being Jalen Hurts, he's only thrown one. But he also is first in passing touchdowns, 27. 27 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions through 10 weeks. That is very, very impressive. He's taking care of the ball, and that's what you got to do if you want to win in the NFL is win the turnover battle. Don't turn the ball over. Obviously, like we've said over and over again, the Rams have a good young defense, very good. They fly around, they make plays. So on offense, you just got to take care of the ball. You got to be able to protect the ball, keep the ball in your hands, let your defense make plays when it's their time on the field, and they do so. Seattle's been on a roll, and they held them to 19 points. Held them under 20 points, and you obviously win the game. Obviously, it was a sloppy win. Some would say 21-19 is not a big blowout win. It's not a high-scoring game against two juggernauts, but Stafford, like you said, adds to his MVP resume. He's looking for one. Obviously, it took him years to get a Super Bowl. He got that. Now he wants to get that luxury MVP. It's a great addition to what I think is a Hall of Fame career for him. He's sixth in the NFL in passing yards per game, 255 and a half. 2,557 passing yards. He's top 5 in the NFL in that. Like I said, first in passing touchdowns, second fewest interceptions. He has the second best passer rating in the NFL, only behind Drake May, who's balling out as well. 112.8 is his passer rating. Um, you know, like we've said, he takes care of the ball. 15 for 28 yesterday. It wasn't a dominant stat line. It didn't really wow you when you look at it, but 15 for 28, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. He just takes care of the ball. He has a very good running back, I think, in Kyron Williams in the backfield who backs him up. Two good wide receivers on the outside, obviously, in Puka Nakua and the veteran Devontae Adams. So he has the weapons all around on that offense. Has a very good O line, and like we've always said, I think it's the number one or number two ranked defense in the whole NFL. On the other side, obviously, as a Panther fans, we have to see them in 2 weeks. But talking about who they have coming up, the next 4 of their 5 games are not easy. It's very tough opponents next 4 of the 5. They have the Buccaneers coming up this week, the Panthers the week after that. The next 4 out of their next 5 is the Bucks, the Panthers, the Lions, and the Seahawks again. So another tough schedule coming up, but the way they're balling right now, like we talked about, we think the Broncos are the best team in the AFC. You can make the argument that the Rams are the best team in the NFC. Very good team. Both sides of the ball do really well for them. Sean McVay has built a very good culture in Los Angeles, a culture that is set on taking care of the football on offense, dominating on defense, making runs in the playoffs every year. He's won a Super Bowl out there, and they're primed to be contenders again this year. They have the weapons on both sides of the ball. I'm very impressed with Matthew Stafford. I don't know if I'd put him number one on my MVP chart. I think he's definitely up there. Um, you know, it's going to be a race to the end. I think there's a few good quarterbacks you can make the argument for. Drake May being one of them, like we've talked about. Matthew Stafford. But even non quarterbacks, Jonathan Taylor's having a great year at running back. You can make the argument for him for MVP. Obviously, with 7 weeks to go, a lot can happen over 7 weeks. A lot can happen on for different players and different teams. Injuries happen, unfortunately. So I don't want to say he's the MVP right now. I think he is definitely top three contender wise. He just it seems like every year he gets older. Obviously, he's not getting any younger, but he gets better. It just seems like he's having a very good season. 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Um, you know, he's being able to find his targets. A lot of people doubted him when he lost Cooper Cup a few years ago. Could he keep it going? Was Puka Nakua the answer? Puka Nakua is definitely the answer. He's maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL. He just seems he's on pace for an amazing season. Devontae Adams has resurrected his career in Los Angeles. He seems to find his footing. Stafford is his guy. 8-2 first in the NFC West. But like we've said, even with the Kansas City Chiefs, our first topic, the name of the game is going to be: can you win the next slate of games? The next 5 weeks don't become any easier for the Rams. Like I said, that's four winning teams I just named off: the Bucks, Panthers, Lions, and Seahawks. That's four winning records right there. You got to. I think they're at home against the Bucks. They got to go to the Panthers. They got to go to Seattle. So it's going to be road test for them. It's going to be a test for them on for the next 5 weeks. Um, and it's all about, can Matthew Stafford keep it going? I think he's definitely, like I said, top three in MVP in my MVP race, my MVP ladder. If he can keep it going, I think he's going to skyrocket to number one on a lot of people's charts, and only can add to his, like I said, Hall of Fame career. He's getting older every year, but he gets better every year. He's so tough. He's such a good quarterback. Obviously, we knew he was a good quarterback in Detroit. He's came to Los Angeles. He's already put a banner up in Los Angeles, and he's looking to put another banner up. And I think he has the pieces to do so. I think they're very good Super Bowl contenders. I think they can make a run in the NFC, and I don't know how many teams can really compete with them right now. I think they have all around talent on both sides of the ball. Number one defense. So definitely a team to keep an eye on. We'll definitely keep our eye on the MVP ladder. Stafford's up there, Drake May's up there, Jonathan Taylor's up there. All good superstars in the NFL right now. But that's all I gotta say. I think Stafford's balling out right now. 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's just something you can't teach. That's talent. And Matthew Stafford is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL right now. There's no doubt about that. He's been that for years. He does it consistently. And yeah, the next 4 out of 5 for them is going to be tough. Bucks, Panthers, Lions, and Seahawks. So we'll see how MVP like Matthew Stafford can be against four very good teams, I think.
Yeah, I just want to say a quick note. Doesn't it feel weird, like, naming the Panthers as like a tough opponent for like another team?
Dude, it's a very great feeling, is what I mean. It's awesome to be able to say four out of their next 5 winning record opponents, and
Yeah,
those winning record opponents being the Carolina Panthers. So definitely going to be a great game in 2 weeks for us. We got two tough opponents coming up. Obviously, we'll talk about that later in the podcast, but we have a tough schedule as well coming up. So I'm
yeah,
excited.
yeah, me too. But and back to Matthew Stafford, I think, you know, when a team like the Los Angeles Rams, when they lose, Cooper Cup to Seattle, I think that's just opened up the room for Puka Nakua even more, because he was already the clear number one even with Cooper Cup. But then having, Nakua as your now main prior number one receiver, it really opened up his ceiling a lot more higher, especially when you're already with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford. You're gonna get your targets, you're gonna get your receptions, all that kind of stuff. And then I think upgrading with Devontae Adams, who's been a career number one wide receiver. You have him now alongside you, to learn alongside and whatnot. I think that really helped Matthew Stafford, because I think that if they had Cooper Cup, I don't think Matthew Stafford has the year that he's having right now. So I think having Devontae and Puka, compete at such a high level right now, I think that's been really productive for Matthew right now. Um,
And I think the Rams, right now, and as we're speaking, I think in order for them, ever since after their rebuilding year, the year I can't remember if it was the year after they won the Super Bowl or if it was the couple years prior, but I know after their rebuilding year, they, returned back to the playoffs and they lost to Philly a couple of times, in the wild card and divisional. And I think that's been their, kind of kryptonite ever since then to like make it past the hump in order to succeed in the playoffs again. So I think right now, as you're saying, Philadelphia is currently the number one seed in the NFC, and Rams are right behind them. So I think if you want to make a case for the Rams being the best team in the NFC, I think they are. In terms, overall case, I think they're better offensively than Philadelphia is right now at the moment. Um, and I think they have what it takes. They have their experienced players, who played against Philadelphia a couple years ago and last year. All those players now have more experience. They've gotten better. I really love what Kobe Durant is doing, the Rams corner. I really love what he's been able to do ever since his rookie year. It really stood out to me. So I think, the Rams overall as a whole, I think they're one of, if not the best team, one of the best teams in the NFL. But I wouldn't be surprised. Obviously, I think Matthew Stafford is going to be an MVP candidate at the end of the year. I think he will. Um, and then yeah, man, I just have a lot of fun watching him as a quarterback, and also just Rams as a whole. Whenever I get to put on the film for them, so um, really cool to see. Coming after winning a Super Bowl and then having to rebuild all that. Get your young guys, get your players and whatnot, and then have all this playoff success again. Making the playoffs and whatnot, and then now having your best year post Super Bowl win. So I think it's really cool to see.
For sure.
Um, and then next topic on the podcast today is the Bears, Chicago Bears, who beat the Minnesota Vikings yesterday, who now have first place in the NFC North right now. They currently sit at 7-3, and I think a lot of this has to obviously come with the help of Ben Johnson and how he is able to help Caleb Williams. In such a big way, and I think a lot of people aren't really there with Caleb Williams yet, but I think he is. I think he's an amazing quarterback. I'm just gonna say that right now. I think he's great. We talked a lot of negatives about the Chicago Bears over the past couple years, but I think bias aside and everything, I think Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears are playing such tough, gritty way. And that's just how Chicago wants it. They want, to be gritty, tough. And when you think of gritty and tough, you think of defense. You think of, well played overall defense. And I think the defense for the Chicago Bears, statistically, they're almost, they're at the bottom in terms of, yards allowed, points allowed, all that stuff. But in terms of like takeaways and turnovers, they're tied for the most. They're tied for first for the most turnovers. Um, uh, uh, getting the most turnovers defensively with 22 on the year. And they've won a couple games with creating those turnovers on their defense. Guys like C.J. Gardner Johnson, most recently picking up, having an interception, creating that win against New York just last week. But overall, I think Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, they have been the success story for the Chicago Bears this year. Every time they play at home, the crowd is, on their feet. They're loud. It feels just like, the old Bears whenever they were, having their success then. And I just want to, have a little comparison from this year and compare it to pre Ben Johnson last year. So 2024 last year, Caleb Williams threw for 2,000 and for through weeks 1 through 11. Right now at the same point, he's last year he threw for 2,016 yards for 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions with a quarterback rating of 83%. And then and then this year so far, he's thrown for 2,136 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions with a quarterback rating of 60.8%. Um, so I think, overall, obviously there's, some differences there in terms of last year and now through, the same amount of weeks. Um, but I just want to, give credit to the Chicago Bears right now. I think they're one of their underrated teams right now in the NFL that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. And I just wanted to give them some props. They're sneaking, away with wins that a lot of people didn't think they would have gotten, with a rookie coach and Ben Johnson even. But I just wanted to give them props, man.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. Ben Johnson, we always thought that he'd be a good coach. Obviously, he was one of the top candidates for the coaching cycle the last 2 or 3 years. He turned down a lot of jobs. He went back to Detroit year after year, but I think he was waiting for the right job, and he thought that the Chicago Bears was the right spot for him. And obviously, it's paying out so far. 7-3, first in NFC North through past halfway mark of the NFL season. Caleb, yesterday was a very sloppy game from both teams. But that usually is what happens in NFC North. Division rivalries. There's a lot of tough teams in that division, a lot of tough teams. So it's usually a scrappy matchup no matter who it is. 19-17, no team scored over 20 points. The quarterbacks didn't really wow the stat sheets. They did. I think both quarterbacks did what they needed to do to put their teams in positions to win. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy led his team down and scored a touchdown to go ahead late in the game, and then Caleb Williams dialed his team. A great kickoff return from the Vikings. No, great kickoff return from the Bears. Put the Bears in the right spot to kick the game-winning field goal by Cairo Santos, 48 yards away. So both teams had a certain player or a certain side of the ball helped them get to a point where they could win the game. I think, like I said, neither quarterback really wowed the stat sheets. Caleb Williams, 16 for 32, 193 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So, 50% completion percentage, not even 200 yards, but, his running backs backed him up. Manun guy, very proud of him. He's really, came from under the radar to his name is making waves around the NFL. 12 carries for 23 yards, not wow, but he did score a touchdown. I think he scored a touchdown a few weeks now. He scored a few touchdowns now. DeAndre Swift backed it up with 21 carries and 90 yards. The Bears only had 333 total yards of offense yesterday. Not what they've usually been putting up. They usually wow the stat sheets in every category. Ben Johnson obviously is very creative, very good play caller. We've seen that in Detroit, and now we're seeing it in Chicago. But on the other side, J.J. McCarthy, 16 for 32 as well, 50% completion percentage, 150 yards. He threw a touchdown at the end of the game. He did throw 2 interceptions. Got to take care of the ball. Like we've said before, turnovers are the name of the game. If you can limit turnovers, if you can be able to if you can win the turnover battle, you usually win games. And the Bears won the turnover battle yesterday. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy let his team down and went ahead in the game. Late in the game, went up by 1 point, and then Chicago came right back and had a great kickoff return, and it led them to like I said, a Cairo Santos game-winning field goal. So, the running backs from Minnesota looked good yesterday. Jordan Mason, 6 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Aaron Jones just came back from injury a few weeks ago, 16 carries, 70 yards on the ground, 81 total. But you know, the Chicago Bears, like you said, their secondary is very impressive. Jalen Johnson, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, they have a very good secondary, and it limited the 2 top targets for the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson only had 5 catches for 61 yards, no touchdowns for him. They kept him out of the end zone. He had 9 targets, only 5 catches, and then Jordan Addison had 7 targets, but only had 2 catches for 20 yards, and he did have a touchdown, but 2 catches for 20 yards on 7 targets. Shout out to the Bears defense. Like you said, a gritty team is usually, made by a defense, and that secondary just flies around. They do the right things. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Jalen Johnson, just to name a few. And it puts Minnesota in a bad situation. They're 4-6. They're trying to find their footing. J.J. McCarthy's been hurt. a few times this year. Not a lot of stability in the backfield. Carson Wentz has been in; he's got hurt. The next 2 weeks are really going to tell if the Minnesota Vikings can make a push to the playoffs, or if their season is, it's mock draft season for them. You're 4-6, but you play the Packers and the Seahawks in your next two games. So, you can easily go from 4-6 to 4-8, and you're in a really tough spot. Like you said, they're dead last in the NFC North. Um, but for the Chicago Bears, they have two tough opponents coming up too. You're first in the NFC North. You're trying to win your first NFC North title in a while. But you have the Steelers and the Eagles coming up next. Obviously the Steelers are going to have Mason Rudolph at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers partially broke a bone in his wrist, so he'll be out for a little bit. But the Steelers still have a good team. I think they still have a good offense. They have good weapons. Obviously they pulled out the win yesterday against Cincinnati. But the Eagles, they're a top team in the NFL right now. Obviously, they won last night. So it's going to be really, it's really going to see. We're really going to see if the Chicago Bears are really the team to compete against, or if they're just frauds that are just trying to just winning games when they should. Obviously, I think the Chicago Bears are a very impressive team. I like Ben Johnson a lot. I've said it before. I wish Ben Johnson would have been our coach a few years ago. He's got that team in the right spot. 7-3 through 11 weeks is right where you want to be. First in the NFC North. Um, you know, like you said, the Bears just seem to find ways to win. Obviously, we talked about that with the Chiefs. You got to be able to find ways to win, and the Chicago Bears find ways to win. Ben Johnson, very gritty team. He's building a culture in Chicago that Bears fans. It's a rich tradition in Chicago. Bears, Chicago fans, they love their sports teams. The Bulls, the Bears, the Cubs, the Blackhawks. It's a very rich sports city, and they love the Chicago Bears. And like you said, when the Bears are playing at home, the fans are just rowdy. They travel well, they show up to home games, and they're loving this team right now. They're loving Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson loves Chicago. Like I said, he waited for the right job to come about. He waited his time. He stayed in Detroit. He waited for the right job, and he thought Chicago was the right job with Caleb Williams. He thought he could develop the former number one pick. And it seems like he's doing that right now. He seems like he's putting Caleb Williams in the right spot to do the right things. Caleb Williams is taking care of the ball. He's wowing on the stat sheet some weeks, but even when he's not wowing, he's not turning the ball over. And that's the name of the game. You can't turn the ball over. And Caleb Williams is doing that. He may not, like I said, light up the stat sheet, but he's not turning the ball over. And the Chicago Bears defense does take the ball away. So you got to win the turnover battle. The offense doesn't give it up. The defense takes it away. It's a recipe for success in Chicago, and I'm very proud of Ben Johnson, what he's done. The next 2 weeks are going to really show what they're about. With the Steelers and Eagles, like I said, and the same thing for the Minnesota Vikings, going to show what they're about. You're 4-6. You got the Packers and the Seahawks coming up. You're last in the NFC North. You got to dig yourself out of the hole you're in, and we'll see if J.J. McCarthy and that offense and that team as a whole can just try to make something happen, and it really ain't showing right now. So, very sloppy game, but very gritty game from both teams. NFC North matchups are always fun to watch, and we'll keep an eye on both teams and see what happens.
Um, Quick question.
Mhm.
So I think it's funny that the Bears and the Panthers, obviously they made that big trade uh in terms with Carolina, getting Bryce Young for the number one overall pick, and then the Bears getting that haul um of picks and players and whatnot with DJ Moore. And they're both teams are kind of, getting good at the same season after, a bunch of years, or not a bunch, but years before of mediocrity or very poor seasons. What are your what are your thoughts on the Chicago Bears? Like, do you have like comparisons in between teams as of as things stand right now? Do you see them as equal, or do you see one team ahead of the other in terms right now?
Yeah, not being biased. I'm not going to be biased here. I'm going to be straight up and be honest. I do think the Chicago Bears are a little better than us right now. I think the record shows it. They win the games they should win. We struggle a little bit against teams that we should beat. Like I said, I think we did very good yesterday. but I want to see it consistently. We kind of sit around that 500 mark, and the Bears are kind of taking it off away from that 500 mark. So right now, the Chicago Bears, I do feel like, are a better team than us right now. I think we're both, like you said, are getting good at the same time. Obviously, past few years we both struggled, especially since that Bryce Young trade. Both teams have struggled, so you really can't say that either one's won a trade. I don't think that you'll ever say that one or the other team has won the trade. I don't think. I guess you could say it if Bryce Young just absolutely fails and he's kicked off the team and he's not on the team anymore. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. I think that Dave Canales and the Panthers trust in Bryce Young. I don't think a change is coming anytime soon at quarterback. And I don't think that anything's Chicago's going to boom anytime soon. I think they're a good team right now, but I'm not going to say they're going to go to the Super Bowl or they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to say that they're going to do things that you could say they're absolutely miles ahead of the Carolina Panthers. I wouldn't say that. I'd say they're a few steps ahead of us, but they're not miles ahead of us better. I think they both teams have good things to look at. Both teams have things to be proud of on both sides of the ball. Um, and I think both teams are happy to just be winning and have a winning record. Um, you know, they both have struggled the past few years. They've had coaches that they have struggled on their team. Obviously us with Matt Rule and Frank Reich, then with Matt Eberflus. So I think it's a tale of if we're asking who the better team is, I think it is the Chicago Bears right now. Obviously that can change as the season goes on. We still have 7 more weeks, but as of now, yes, I do think the Chicago Bears are a better team, but I don't think that they are miles and miles ahead of the Carolina Panthers. I think that they both are good teams, but they're not. There's not one that I say is exceptionally better than the other. I think they both have good things to harp on and good things to look at and say, hey, I'm proud to be a fan because of this. I'm proud to, you know, say my team is good at this, my team does this well, and I think both teams can do that. But if we're putting them tail of the tape side by side, the Chicago Bears are a better team right now. But hey, 7 more weeks, anything can happen, things can change. We'll see as the season goes on.
I would agree with that statement. I'd agree. Yeah, I think the Bears are a little bit better than us right now at the moment. I think coaching they are for sure.
Yeah,
Um, Coaching, I think definitely have more takeaways than us, but Carolina really isn't known for their turnovers and whatnot on defense. More so, um, just playing hard nosed defense. But this year, moving on to our next subject, which is the Panthers beating the Falcons yesterday to improve to 6-5 on the year, back over the 500 mark. Um, what are your thoughts on the game? I know you have a lot of, I know you have a lot of stuff to say on that game. What are your thoughts, on Bryce Young and what you saw yesterday?
yeah. First off, shout out to Bryce Young. You know, last 2 weeks he could barely get over 200 yards, and this week he breaks the single game passing yard mark in franchise history, taking over Cam Newton's record. So shout out Bryce Young, man. I think he looked comfortable. He took a few hits, came out of the game a few times, even had to go to the locker room for that ankle that hurt him a few weeks ago, and he came back out there and he just he played tough. He came out there and he did what he had to do, and I'm so proud of him, man. You know I'm never gonna. I don't think we're close to a point, or we were close to a point where I would say that I'm absolutely done with Bryce Young. That I can't stand to see him even take another step for my team. I don't think we were close to that. I think there's things that we criticized and we had rightfully so should have criticized. But I don't think we were close to saying, "Oh, I think we should release Bryce Young," or "Oh, I don't think Bryce Young should start another game for the Carolina Panthers." We definitely had things that we could criticize, things we said he needed to improve on, and that's still the same way. We can go back to the last podcast. I said, I want to see more shots downfield. I want to see Bryce Young improve in different, marks in his game. But I'm not gonna even if we had a great game, which we obviously did. Like the stats are gonna show that. I'll name off the stats in a minute. The stats are going to show we had a great game. The tape will show we had a great game. You go back and watch the highlights. There's not many things that I say, man, we made a mistake here. There's not many mistakes I can point out. Obviously, Bryce didn't throw a pick. He didn't lose. Turnovers on downs. I guess you can count, but he didn't. He didn't force anything yesterday. He didn't make any mistakes, big time mistakes, except for maybe the 4th and 1 where he slipped. But it looked like his ankle gave out on him. Obviously, it was hurting. He limped to the post game press conference. He looked like he was hurt. He came out of the game twice for the ankle. Even Andy Dalton was warming up at a certain point before Bryce Young came out of the locker room and came back. Um, but like I said, even if we had a great game, like I said in the last podcast, even if we had a great game and we, threw the ball down the field more, which we did, if we did the things that we criticized them for last week, I'm still not sold. Obviously I'm very happy about it. Obviously, I think it is a very good step in the right direction. But like I said, and we've always said, every team is going to say this. Every fan's going to say this. They want to see their team do it consistently. We want to see this happen consistently week after week. Make them respect you in every aspect of your game. Make them respect you in the run game. Make them respect you in the short, intermediate, and long game when it comes to passing. Make them respect you in every aspect of the field, every area of the field. Make them have all 11 defenders respect you in some way, shape, or form. And I think they made the Atlanta Falcons do that this week. Bryce Young, 31 from 45, 448 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was almost 15 yards per pass. So impressed with him, man. He did really well this week. Obviously, he heard the chatter, I think. Like I said, the last 2 weeks he struggled to even get close to 200 yards. Obviously, he was in a windy day in Green Bay with a win, and then last week we just struggled against the Saints when we absolutely shouldn't. We should be 7. We should be 7-4 right now. We shouldn't be 6-5. So, but we can nitpick at all we want. We got to give props where it's due. We had a great game yesterday. Tedero McMillan, 8 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns for him. He now sits 6th in the whole NFL in receiving yards. The rookie's balling out. I think he is my no bias. I'm not even being biased here. You can ask anybody. He is the clear-cut rookie of the year. In my opinion, I don't know who else you can say is a better rookie than Tedero McMillan right now. Xavier Legette even impressed me yesterday. 4 receptions for 83 yards and a touchdown. We obviously have criticized him a lot. I think he has been more criticized than anybody on this team outside of Dave Canales on this podcast. But hey, he balled out yesterday. He had to stretch out for a touchdown in the back of the end zone. That was over 30 yards in the air for Bryce Young. Not something we really see a lot, but hey, he made a great route. He had a lot of separation, stretched out, made the catch, scored a touchdown. So I'm very impressed with Xavier Legette yesterday. I think they really wanted to slow down Rico Dowdle. I think that's what most teams have wanted to do over the past few weeks. Only 19 carries for 45 yards for him, but hey, he picked up in the pass game, 55 reception yards. He had 100 total yards in the air and on the ground for him. Very proud of Jalen Coker. I think Jalen Coker had a little coming out party this week. 4 receptions for 52 yards, and he converted the 2-point conversion at the end of the regulation to go up 3 points to force the Atlanta Falcons to tie the game with a field goal that they barely snuck in. Obviously, we went to overtime and won. But 515 total yards of offense, 22 first downs in the game. Shout out Dave Canales. I think he called his best game of his Panther career. I think that was the best called game. I think it was better than the Falcons game last year in Atlanta. I think he called. I don't really see a play that I was really mad about. I think there was some plays you can nitpick. Obviously the 4th and 1, the 4th and short passing stuff. It aggravates me a lot just because I think that our offensive line can get you a yard or two if you need it, especially with Rico Dowdle. He likes to put his shoulders down, run somebody over, get that extra yard. But, I think
Well, we
sometimes,
did.
what do you say?
We did. We actually we did convert on 4th and. Are you talking about like
No,
passing on 4th down, or did?
that 4th and short that one time that Bryce rolled out and Ellis ran him
Oh,
down. Score the first
yeah.
down, stuff like that. 4th and 1. I don't want to get really too cute, especially when you just need a yard. Obviously, you're not going to really run your quarterback up the middle from under center. And Bryce Young, again, he is 5'10" and about 190, so you're not going to really tush push him. I guess you could bring in a guy like Tommy Trimble or somebody like a tight end, like some teams do. like with like the Steelers, they obviously use a tight end. They don't use Aaron Rodgers. I guess you could do that if you wanted to, and maybe that happens later on in the year. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking it into existence now. Dave Canales might be watching this podcast for all I know, and he puts out Tommy Tremble in the tush push next Monday against San Francisco. If he does, I will go absolutely insane. But who knows? I don't want to get cute in those situations. Go under center, I like that, but don't try to roll out. I think when Bryce gets out of the pocket, sometimes the pressure gets to him quickly. I think when it's in between the tackle box, I think the offensive line does well. I think they protect him very well. But when defensive linemen are able to get outside, I think Icky and Taylor Moton kind of struggle sometimes. Um, but I can't really get mad at a lot of things yesterday. I was really impressed with the offense did all game. Like Dave Canales said, I think he said he thinks he ran out of play calls at the end of the game.
Yep.
We call so many plays, but there was not a play that I was really mad about. Obviously, like we said, we can nitpick plays all day. But I'm not going to say I'm sold yet. I'm not going to say I'm sold. I told y'all on the podcast last week, no matter what we did this week, obviously we had a great game, probably the best game we've had in the last two, probably the best game we've had as Bryce Young as a quarterback on offense. I'm not going to say that I'm sold yet. We've got to do it consistently. I don't want to see 448 yards this week and we go into San Francisco next week and he barely throws for 150 and he throws 2 picks. You got to make it consistently. Obviously, you did it against the Falcons, who are a struggling team this year. So let's go out and do it against the 49ers. Let's go out and do it against the Rams. Let's go out and do this against teams that, teams that would not expect us to do this against them. Bryce 15 passes over 10 yards yesterday. He was 10 for 15 on those passes. I was impressed, man. He's only 5 incompletions, passes over 10 yards. Had a few touchdowns over 10 yards. He had a touchdown over 30 yards to, like I said, Xavier Legette in the back of the end zone. He's only 48 yards, no, not that 38 yards shy of 2,000 on the season. And I think he barely had over 2,000 all last year. He's thrown for 14 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. So he's improving in that area. Touchdown to interception ratio is 2-1. So he's improving in that area. He didn't turn the ball over yesterday. I was very proud of him. Most of the time people say he has to get that mandatory turnover out of the way and then he balls out, but he balled out without having to turn over the ball yesterday, and it really impressed me. He had to silence the haters. A lot of people were on his back. A lot of people were expecting more. It's the 3rd year of him as the quarterback. We said with the Bears trade, we gave up a lot. We gave up draft capital. We gave up our number 1 wide receiver at the time. So obviously we want to see him succeed. We want to see him do well. I'm never going to say I don't want my quarterback to do well, no matter who it is. But we wanted to see more out of him. And I think we knew what he could do. You just go back and watch the Alabama tape under Nick Saban. He could throw the ball downfield. There's plenty of plays, him throwing 40, 50-yard passes to Jameson Williams. There's plenty of passes to Henry Ruggs, people like that. I mean, he knew he could throw the ball down the field. He can make the plays down the field. But, if this is the case and this is what we've been waiting to see, and Dave Canales said that he's done it in practice and this is what we're doing in practice and he finally showed it in game, then maybe it's not a Bryce Young thing. Maybe it's a Dave Canales doesn't have trust in his quarterback thing. And that's another thing that we need to nitpick about Dave Canales is you got to have trust. If you're going to put Bryce Young out there week in and week out, this is your job on the line. You got to have trust in your number 1 guy. You got to have trust in the guy you're putting behind center. So, obviously, he had trust in him this week, and it paid off. I think he was very proud of Bryce Young. I think he's, obviously the post-game speech in the locker room was probably the most energetic and exciting I've seen that whole team as a whole the past 2 years under Dave Canales. So, I'm excited to see what we can do next Monday. Prime time, I'm excited, man. We have a winning record. We're going to play on prime time, a big-time opponent in the 49ers, 7-4 on the year. It's time to go prove ourselves. The Buccaneers have a tough game next week. They play the Seahawks. I'm pretty sure. Like I said, they play the Seahawks next week. If they lose and we win, we're in sole possession of first place in NFC South. So, things can happen, man. I'm so excited. Having a winning record this far into the season is not something we're used to, but it's something I'm very proud of. It's something I'm very excited about. It's something that I can sit down every week and be excited to watch Carolina Panthers football, knowing we have a chance to go to the playoffs. We have a chance to make, we have a chance to play in December or maybe January. That's something that's so exciting. It's something you're always wanting to do. Um, football playoff time in Carolina in January is something you want. It's something we want to see. It's something we haven't seen in a while. And we don't have an easy schedule the rest of the way. We have one of the toughest schedules the rest of the way. So we got to go prove it. I don't really want to talk about the Falcons much. Um, I really want to just harp on the Panthers and what we did yesterday. So I'll let you talk. If you want to talk about the Falcons, you can. But I'm very impressed with what the Panthers did on all sides of the ball. I think defense did well. Special teams did well. Bam Martin Scott got a peanut punch fumble, and it was recovered by Princely on the kickoff coverage. Obviously Ryan Fitzgerald 3 for 3 yesterday, another game-winning field goal for him. The rookie is a baller. I think we picked the right guy. The kicking contest this offseason between him and Matt Wright. I think he was definitely the better kicker, and I think he's showing it week in and week out. He's only missed, I think, 2 field goals all year. So shout out Ryan Fitzgerald, shout out the rookie, shout out another rookie, T Mac. We have a young team. We have a very young team, and they're winning games. That's something you want to see out of your own core. But like I said, I want to see it consistently week in and week out, and hopefully that's the case going forward. That's for sure.
Bro, if we come out and score like damn near like 7 points only next Monday night, bro, I'm gonna be so mad.
Yeah,
You have no idea, bro. Like,
me too.
but but yeah, like you said, we have to be consistent. Um, and no matter what happened, I wasn't gonna hop the bandwagon and be like, oh, we got a franchise quarterback. None of that, bro. No. And I said it last week. I said it in the TikToks. I said it. I criticized Bryce Young a lot. Made a film breakdown on last week's game against New Orleans. And I came out and I said, after the game yesterday, I made a TikTok and um, I gave where credit was due. I gave Bryce his credit. And I thought he played well. I thought he played good. And I texted you like, this is what happens. You mean to tell me this is what happens when you throw the ball downfield? Like,
Sure, for sure.
good things good things happen. I don't know why it took 11 games to do that to open the playbook up, but I mean at least he didn't wait till week 18. So it's good to see early. But I mean, let's do it now often. Like if Dave Canales goes back to throwing 10-yard curl routes, and not you know, post routes or fades or anything like that, like we're gonna have some issues. But for the time right now, I'm really proud of the Panthers as a whole. I think they played very well yesterday, offensively and defensively. Obviously you had Bijan Robinson, and Michael Penix. They were cooking. They were cooking us in the first half. I'm not even gonna lie. Bijan had over 100 yards rushing, but coming out the second half, Averill, Evero made his adjustments, and we only held Atlanta to 6 total points. That second half, and including overtime. So, and I think it was only just 2 field goals. So, I was really impressed with the defense. Coming out of halftime, made our adjustments. Um, and then when Michael Penix Jr. went out with injury, who's out for the remainder of the year, I think now. Um, and then having Kirk Cousins, you had to adjust, on the fly with another quarterback. But having Kirk Cousins in there, you already played, Kirk Cousins before, so you kind of have an idea of what you want to do, but to do it on the fly and to continue and to take care, deep of your job, defensively. I thought the defense has been playing very well. So shout out to the defense. Shout out to Trevor Morig. um, I could be butchering his name, but I think he has been such a huge pickup, for us in the run in terms of the run game. He's tied for most tackles for loss behind the line of scrimmage. Um, I think as a DB, um, was I think like 9 or 10. So
Yeah, he's a baller.
he's really been helping out heavily in the run game and as a slot corner as well. Um, so I think he is a big part, of our defensive success as well. Um, and there was there was a possession in I think the fourth quarter where J.C. Horn, they called a questionable pass interference on J.C. Horn, and then the next play, um or was it pass interference? I'm not sure. But they called a flag on J.C. Horn, and then the next um play after that or whatnot, um Thornton um was locking up on Drake London and then batted the ball down, and then which forced Atlanta to punt. So I think which was on the next set of downs. So really, that was a really good defensive possession there that I wanted to shout out. Um, but yeah, overall, I thought the offense played well. Yeah, you had Ted McMillan, who's sixth in the NFL in receiving yards. I think he's gonna break 1,000 yards, which, well, I think the last time we had a rookie wide receiver who had 1,000 yards. Was it DJ Moore or Kelvin Benjamin?
Uh, I'd have to check to make sure. I can probably post it on Twitter tomorrow. It's
Okay.
one of the two. It might be DJ Moore though. DJ Moore had a very impressive rookie year as well. But I don't know if he had 1,000 yards receiving. I'd have to check it on that.
Okay. Well, um, I think he's gonna break 1,000 yards this year. If we continue to play at this pace and whatnot. And then having the help of Xavier Leggett, who finally decided, he wanted to, be a football receiver this week. So shout out to him. Um, on that fade ball, he like ran, I think, the fastest he's ever ran in his life. I mean, all he did was take the DB's cushion and then just get out there. And then he caught the ball, hands only. He's a really chest catch guy. He doesn't really catch it with his hands a whole lot. Normally likes to catch it with his chest. So I was really impressed with that. But that's this is what we want to see out of our receivers. Dave Canales used to open up the playbook. Just let it rip. Bryce is really good. In the spread shotgun looks, um, and just let it rip. So I was really happy to see that. But he's only doing this against Atlanta. He's only doing this against Atlanta. Like, I want to see this against other teams. To really get um, get this thing going. Like, can he be our franchise quarterback going forward? Like, he's 4-1 against Atlanta's career and all those games. He's played very well. But I want to see it against a different team. I want to see this on a consistent basis. Um, obviously, I don't think he's gonna throw for almost 500 yards every game, but I want to see some form of consistency with Bryce in the passing offense and the Dave Canales. So I'm not gonna hop on the bandwagon just yet, and have full trust in that. But for the moment right now, I am really impressed with what we're doing right now. Um, and in terms, like you said, next week, San Francisco, on the road, another huge road test. I think at that point, Brock Purdy and the 49ers, they're going to have their guys back and healthy for the most part, excluding like Fred Warner on defense and stuff. In terms of offense, they're going to get their guys back. So it's going to be a huge test for our defense. We'll be playing Christian McCaffrey, former Panther, next week. So for the first time since he's been since he got traded away. So it's gonna be really, cool to see how we, game plan around that, and what we do next week. But I'm excited, man. I really am. I think this is our biggest game, in a long time. You know, for sole place in the division if Tampa Bay loses on Sunday, and I think the Panthers are looking at that. I mean, they got to. They ought to be looking at that. To have that extra motivation, if you get the Bucks to lose and you're able to win, you get that first place, get that automatic playoff bid if you continue to keep up like that. Um, so I think it's really, and I said it, with the Chiefs earlier. How badly do the Panthers want it? How bad, they're only gonna play to what they want to play because this team's talented enough. I know they're talented. They just have to put the pieces together, and 6 wins, 5 losses right now. Um, we've already went over our total win mark, from last year. So I'm really really proud. Really excited for what we're able to do. This upcoming week. And I don't know if you saw, but did you get a chance to see the live yet that I did yesterday or not,
No, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. I've been meaning to.
bro? Like I
How'd it go?
couldn't, bro. It was like so much fun. Like like towards the beginning and whatnot, I was like, just getting everything going and whatnot. Like I was still it felt weird at first, just talking, in front of the laptop and whatnot. Um, but during the fourth quarter and whatnot, I was up on my seat, like I was like
Heck
pacing
yeah.
around. I was pacing around and whatnot. But I thought it was really good. I think I had a peak of like 4 viewers, which wasn't bad for a live stream, I didn't think for the first time. Um, so I think it was pretty fun yesterday. Um, we'll be doing it again next week, so I'm excited for that. Um, but yeah, if you ever get a chance to, just check couple minutes out of it,
Yeah, I'll check it out.
yeah. I think it was like 3 hours and 35 minutes.
Heck
So
yeah, dude. That's awesome. I love it.
there's that. But all right, moving on to our next topic, which is buy or sell hot takes. Um, I only have one this week. What about you?
One.
One? All right, let's hear it.
It's something we talked about earlier. We talked about Matthew Stafford MVP race, but how about Jonathan Taylor, first non-quarterback MVP to win the MVP since Adrian Peterson in 2012. Jonathan Taylor's balling right now. Obviously they had a bye week this week, and I think he's still number one in rushing yards in the NFL. Um, he's doing amazing things. He's over 100 yards rushing every game. It seems like multiple touchdowns. He can break away anytime. I'm not saying he's going to win it. I think he has a good chance to win it. Depends on what he does over the next few weeks. But hey, maybe we can just give a non-quarterback the MVP for the first time since Adrian Peterson. It's been like 13 years. I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but hey, go Jonathan Taylor.
Dude, I don't think we'll ever see a non-quarterback win an MVP anytime soon. I'm gonna be so real. If Cooper Cup didn't win it, to win his triple crown, if Saquon Barkley didn't win it last year, I don't think any non-quarterback is gonna win the MVP unless they just go absolutely ballistic. Like I'm talking like, um, you know, 3,000 rushing yards, 25 touchdowns, all that type of stuff. I just don't see it happening. I think he's definitely most likely going to win Offensive Player of the Year, if anything. Um, but in terms of MVP, I'm gonna have to sell it. I just don't see it happening. I think the MVP is a quarterback award, and I think that's what the NFL, goes to. Even though I feel like it should be, you know, other people winning it, but I think it's a QB award, and I think it's going to stay like that, until something crazy happens. But I'm gonna sell that one, which I think I think he's going to be an MVP candidate, but I don't see him winning it. I don't think he'll win it.
All right, what's yours?
So mine is I'm actually going to stay with what I said before, and I think Carolina will finish a top 10 defense. I'm sticking to that statement. I think I said it like 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks after that, held held New Orleans to 17 points. But if you watch, but if you if a normal fan looks at the game, Carolina held them to really 10 points through fourth quarters up until that last touchdown that New Orleans had, in which Carolina defense was gassed because of how bad the offense was. And then this week, um, you have Atlanta and whatnot. You held them to 6 second half points. I think this is like the third time that Carolina has held the opposing team to 6 second half points this year. So that's obviously really good to see. I don't know the statistical stats right now with Carolina, but I'm gonna stick to it. I think they're gonna finish with a top 10 defense.
I love it, man. You know what? I'm gonna buy it as well. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Let's do it. You know what? Hey, I'm impressed, man. Israel Rivera has impressed me the last few weeks. We dogged him all off season. We said we were very surprised that Dave Canales was going to keep him on as the defensive coordinator. And he had to prove it, and he's been proving it, man. He's been proving it week in and week out, and I can only be impressed. And I've been impressed week in and week out. Like I said, this team is about consistency. I want to see consistency, and that defense is consistently doing the right thing week in and week out. Hey, we get overtime yesterday. They get the ball first. I think it was a 3-and-out right away. And we get the ball and Bryce Young drives it down and we win the game. So hey, shout out the defense. Defense does the right things week in and week out. And I'm gonna buy that with you. Top 10 defense at the end of the year. I'll text you and tell you where they are right now. They got to be like top 20 somewhere, but it
Oh,
can
for sure.
change week in and week out. So I'll let you know. I'll text you after this and let you know.
Bet. And also as things currently stand right now between the Cowboys and the Raiders, it's currently 31-16 Cowboys, with 13:22 left. So we're gonna mark that as a Cowboys win because I don't think Geno Smith has the clutch gene right now in his body. So we're gonna
Heck
mark it.
no. Pete, what I say. Pete Carroll and the Raiders don't win a game the rest of the year. They get the number one pick. Pete Carroll gets fired. It's gonna happen. I'm telling you, it's happening. It's
Hey,
gonna happen.
hey! I said though that Pete Carroll will get fired, but I don't think they're gonna go winless. I
Well,
did
we'll
have
keep it.
I did have Dallas winning though.
Okay, so hey, we're 1 week into the hot take, and they did lose. So the hot take lives on for another week.
Yep, love it. All right. Well, that's gonna conclude episode 11 of the Between the Lines podcast. Um, Always fun to do this every Monday. Look forward to it. Different episode, different start time episode next week since Carolina will be playing on Monday night. Be back here Tuesday night, and to break down everything that happened Sunday and Monday. And we'll see y'all then. Thank y'all for watching this
Thank
episode,
y'all.
and we'll be back next Tuesday.
See y'all.